Good evening. I'm Ellen Myers, the Programs and Communications Director for the Newton Free Library. Thank you for tuning in to the first program in the 2021-2022 Poetry Series. Our featured speakers are Marcia Carp, Kevin Gallagher, and Janet Sylvester, and we welcome them. We're grateful to have them with us and are so appreciative of all that Doug Holder does behind the scenes to coordinate this series. Do mark your calendars. The next poetry session will be held on Tuesday, November 9th at 7 o'clock. And you can register for it on our virtual events calendar at newtonfreelibrary.net, along with all the wealth of programs we have for people of all ages. To let you know, if you want to read during the open mic, please chat to me as the host, and I'll bring up as many folks as possible, time permitting, after our featured speakers. I'll chat directly to you to let you know when it's your turn, so please keep an eye on that if you sign up to participate. We do ask that you stay muted during the session unless it's your turn to read during the open mic, and please know that this program is being recorded. I have enabled closed captioning. There is a CC live transcript button at the bottom of your screen in the controls, depending on what type of device you're watching on, and you can use that to turn the CC on or off. Also, I'll put a link in the chat for those who want to sign up for one or more of the emails that the library sends out. It's a great way to keep informed of everything that we have going on. Also, I have to brag a little bit. Our solar panels came online live last week, and they're now providing 49% of the library's electricity, which is awesome. So please visit us in person or online at newtonfreelibrary.net. And now I'll turn the session over to our first featured poet, Kevin Gallagher.
Thanks so much, Ellen. Great to see everyone. And thanks, Doug Holder, for hosting this reading series for a long time. I used to live in Newton, and I think I've read in this series in person at the library a couple times. It's great to be part of the community. I wish I was in person with all of you folks. I'm gonna first set my timer here to make sure I don't get in trouble, even though you can't smack me if I go too long, but I promise I won't, because now I have my clock on. I published a couple books during COVID. I haven't been able to read enough about, and so I'm gonna split this into three different sections. I'm gonna read from two things that came out during the COVID era, and not that we're out of it by any stretch of the imagination, and another book that comes out in November. The first one that I'll read from is called Radio Plays. It's published by Dos Madres Press. I just put a link to it in the chat. And it's a series of radio plays, some of them that I've read on the web, some of them actually on the radio. And they're what I call talking sonnets. They're sonnets, but more in the tradition of, say, John Lee Hooker's Talking Blues than anyone in the Elizabethan tradition. The poem I'll read is called Unit in Gray, and I read it for my mother, who's not doing so well. Unit in Gray is the corner of two streets, Unit Street and Gray Street in Providence, Rhode Island, on Federal Hill, the Italian section. Pasquale. I crossed the Atlantic when I was 12. There was nothing to do in Tiana. I became a conductor of trolley cars in uniform. I was a captain of my own ship. I carried myself well, all the way up to the Brown and Sharp light bulb factory. I bought a plot of land, triple decker, the first on the block with toilets inside. A shot of brandy mixed with one raw egg every morning for the rest of my life. I ate meat during the Depression. I loved your mother, but I didn't show it. Milkman, cream on top, skim a bit, icebox, every hallway, old country, crucifix. Antoinetta. I was smart enough to drop out of school when I was 12 to take care of your mom. Much later, Louis started coming by. We would walk and walk all around the block, but he said he would never marry me until the damn Depression was over and he had a job for a family. Finally, he asked me to marry him. We went to New York for our honeymoon. Then we moved upstairs to the second floor. My brother Billy did the same next door. Everyone else was within a few blocks. I never read a book in my life. I will never let my kids get away with that. Norma. Masses were in Latin and very long, though Latin would come in handy in college, the metamorphosis in biology. After we finished mouthing Our Father, my brother would say we were rounding third, rosary beads, veils, fur coats, and handkerchiefs. After Mass, black Buick Skylark visits, first to swap out flowers at the graves, second, aunts and uncles' garlic homes, stromboli, olives, pizzelas, and coffee. Grandmother sits up, cup, saucer, straight, talking first communions, talking the old country, talking other women, talking what's for dinner, talking husbands. She choked, slumped, then died right in front of me. Pasquale to Etta. I want to give you a little money. Please hold on to it just in case I run into trouble and may need it. If I don't end up needing it, split it with your brother and sister when I die. Yeah, I'm getting married and moving away with my new wife to Florida. Yeah, she has 4 kids of her own, but I won't be giving her a cent or them. She doesn't know anything about it, and you don't know anything about it, and I don't know anything about it either. I ask you, promise me. Pa, I don't know what you're talking about. Billy to Anna. I know you aren't talking to Etta, so stick your head out the window and talk to me, Anna. I'm down here on the street. What are you doing down there on the street? I'm not going to scream my business to the whole neighborhood from up here. Etta says I can't pass the 2nd floor because you two aren't talking anymore. She tells me if I'm talking to you, she won't say another word to me too. Well, don't you think she can hear you down there? She's blasting her radio. She can't hear. Do you really think I can't hear you too? You might as well be shouting from the roof. Jippy to all 3 of them. What are you 3 fighting about? Uncle Jippy yelled from the 1st floor porch. The 3 of yous leave each other alone. Shouldn't you be down at Quonset, Billy? I don't know what we are fighting about, but I'm starting to feel like I should be thinking about crawling into a hut over there, just living on the bay, rather than having to guess who's my friend and who's my enemy each day. I didn't come back to the family to watch y'all argue about money. I'm going back to the CCC. $30 a month. Send some home. Keep 5. Norma and Billy Jr. Our parents aren't talking to each other. Good. Then let's slip out of the neighborhood and pretend we're down in New York City. First, we'll go over to the MoMA, rooms full of painted American flags. Giacometti's looking right through me. Abbott and Costello meet the mummy at the Paramount on 43rd Street. Then we'll make our way over to the Strand, pretend to read in village coffee shops, slip away to see the Basilica, hop back on a Pullman to Providence, have an ice cream cone on Federal Hill, then take separate routes back to Unit Street. Your dad would hear us talking through the screens. He'd come right over and let himself in, then plop himself in the corner rocker, unbutton his pants, and light a cigar. My mom screamed at him, "This isn't your house. How do you think you can walk right in here?" He'd say, "You're my sister. I lived on top of you for Christ's sakes, and my niece is visiting." Etta, give him a plate of food," Louis would say to calm everyone down. Little pizzas, pickles, antipasta, handmade ravioli, and then some ham. Lady fingers, cannoli, and coffee. Then Louis would say, "Time to see a man about a horse." I've regretted that I didn't go see your mother in the hospital. Our parents weren't talking to each other, and I knew that I would get in trouble. When she died, I just couldn't stop crying. Well, it was much worse when your father died. My father thought he'd make peace once and for all. So he walks up to your mom in the hearse, and she starts throwing every curse at him, wailing her fists and screaming, "How could you?" She had had enough and willed the cash to use instead of sharing it, as she had said. We couldn't believe when we all got the checks. 50 years of fighting for $10,000. Today, I kneel in front of your casket in ashes. Your 4 dogs are at your feet. Your hands are folded around an icon. I told my grandkids that you were asleep. They asked why you're sleeping in a box. I know it's you, but you don't look like you. You look like you're wearing a mask. Of course, you were still wearing your glasses. A week ago, I showed you black and whites. I wasn't sure if you could see them though. You looked right at me. You looked right through me. You squeezed my hand before I had to go. I can't believe you were there and not here. I stand beside you and I'll have to shake all their hands. Thank you. That's from a book, Radio Plays, published by Dos Madres Press in 2019. I won a writing fellowship to live in Heinrich Boll's house in Achill Island, Ireland, in the summer, for part of the summer of 2020. Heinrich Boll's a Nobel Prize winning novelist, German novelist, probably most known for The Clown. And after he won the Nobel Prize, he was like Bob Dylan or Elvis, and people would just line up and try to engage with him, and he couldn't get any writing done. And folks told him about this place, which is actually the furthest western point of Europe, Achill Island, where he had a little cottage there, and he wrote a number of his novels there. And now it's a writer's retreat where you can go there and spend some time. So I wrote a little book that was published by Red Fox Press in Ireland called The Apprentice from Drogoda. And it's basically the story of John Boyle O'Reilly, a Irish Fenian, sort of radical in the 19th century, who knew that the Irish could never topple the English through their own means. And so he decided that the only way to do it would be to infiltrate the British Army and try to beat them from within. Well, that didn't quite work out. The British put him in Dartmoor, which was considered the harshest prison for those kind of folks. He escaped 3 or 4 times, and so he was on one of the last ships that sent prisoners to Australia, to Wales. And he worked there for a long time, and he escaped into the ocean and actually landed on a Bedford whaling ship, came all the way to Massachusetts, scrapped his way with no education to be the editor of the Boston Pilot, which was the biggest newspaper in Boston at the time, and in a sort of a national Catholic newsletter. He scrapped Fenianism and became part of the American cause. Famous poet, John F. Kennedy's favorite poet, and an abolitionist. Interestingly, there are 2 statues of him in Boston. And as far as I know, and you Bostonians like myself can correct me if I'm wrong, there's actually only 4 sculptures of poets in Boston. 2 of John Boyle O'Reilly, 1 of Phyllis Wheatley, and 1 of Robert Burns. Interesting distribution. So I'll read a few poems from this small book. One's called The Apprentice from Drogoda, 1865. The world is small when the enemy is loose. I'll rest when they have nooses around their necks. I know what I've been born here to do. I won't be a serf on our land they took. I won't just stand here as we starve to death. The world is small and the enemy is loose. We are losing our faith, our lives, our food. The ugly truth is they might hang me first. But now I know what I'm here to do, to fight for freedom and independence too. I will kill undercover in a British vest. The world is shrinking and the enemy is loose. A silent voice won't do anyone good. Life is your chance to make your own events. I know what it is that I have to do, even if it means that I will meet my doom. At least I will die in the pursuit of truth. The world is shrinking and the enemy is loose. Now I know what I was born here to do. So he gets captured and put in Dartmoor prison, and they have what's called a drumming out. I was sentenced to life in prison, starting with 6 months of solitary confinement. Parades of troops assembled in the square in their dark blue cloth and their heavy braid, with fife and drum behind their marching feet. All for me, several thousand 10th Dragoon Guards, the 3rd and 75th Regiments, the 85th Light Infantry and its big brass band. I also wore their cloth and heavy braid. While the large crowd stood at attention, they stripped that cloth from me, piece by piece. They clothed me in a woolen convict dress. They shackled me in chains. They marched me through the streets where all of Dublin could see me in my pride. He tried to escape a number of times, like I mentioned, and went to um, went to Australia. Interestingly, on the boat, he published a literary magazine called the Wild Goose, 2 pages with poems on it. They somehow let him do it. There's only like 15 copies of them. There's actually one of them in the Irish Museum. They were so concerned about this guy. There was an article about him in the Times of London. The Times of London, October 10th, 1867. Quite a large count of turbulent spirits are among the miscreants on that ship. We know what Fenian folly will dare. They left their country for their country's good, but a scene of carnage on the ocean and resistance to our lawful authority is within the range of possibility when mixing mad criminals with the Irish. These rowdies consider themselves martyrs and constitute 3/4 of the living beings who are cooped up in that convict ship. Panic has taken Australian settlers, demanding that the ship be promptly seized before rape and pillage flows from the sea. Prisoner 9843, Wales. My job was to hack the jungle to death. After years of cutting and blasting roads, not one single white man ever found an ounce, but the Australians would never give up. Black-skinned bushmen moved all around us. Their chiefs wore hammered breastplates of pure gold. Riveted to 30 pounds of iron, separated from my compatriots, you gave me an axe and taught me how to swing. I looked at the army of mahogany, lit up by thousands of white cockatoos, motionless under a blue copper sky. My sweat would sting as my axe would ring, and those giants of a lost age fell down. He escapes on this ship, headed for Bedford. And there's another Times of London article, 1869, called Absconder. John Boyle O'Reilly, registered number 9843, Imperial convict, arrived in the colony per convict ship Hougoumont in 1869. Sentenced to 20 years, 9th of July, 1866. Description: healthy. Appearance: present age 25 years, 5 feet 7.5 inches. High black hair, brown eyes, dark complexion, and convicted Irishman. Dangerous, conniving, untrustworthy, against the crown, revolutionary, absconded from convict road party, Bunbury, 18th of February. Finds his way to Boston after this ship. Help wanted, Boston, 1870. Positively no Irish need apply. My people were half starved and penniless, farmers without any tools for the city. Most of them went working on the wharfs. Women made factory shoes or sewed from home. We had our will, our music, and our God. But many wondered why we traveled here. I had worked as a printer, a soldier, a poet, a sailor. I dug ditches. I was a whaleboat man, a convict, a courier, and a mahogany sawyer. For those vacancies, I'd had enough. I wanted to be a newspaper man. My only weapon would be my pen.
Kevin, it's about 20 minutes now.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Thanks so much, everyone. I'll put the link to this one in the chat as well.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for coming. I'm very sorry I was late today. First time in over 20 years, but it happens. So thanks for being here. Our next poet is Marcia Carp. Her first collection, If by Song, was recently published by the Lily Poetry Press. She has poems and translations in journals and anthologies in England and America, including the Times Literary Supplement, the Harvard Review, the Guardian, and Partisan Review. Welcome, Marcia.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you for having me here. Erratatum. I knew a drummer when I was a girl, and he was a man who told me his rat-a-tat-tat. They'd never had anything like me, he said, ensnared not from love, but from art among their beaten men. Though we kissed after hot dogs and tasted of mustard, his rolls and his flams and his tat-a-tat-toos never sounded between us. The girl from one side, the man from the other of town. He's still a man, if still he is. I'm now a woman in grief for her art. My tittle, my jot have been scraped from my song. They are mine and are perfect. Stolen, my leash sheep, my grace notes, my ruffles. I've always remembered that man from our vinegar kiss and his report, not the first, but the first I'd heard as he brushed by in kindness my life of unmuffled madness from art, that if I dare master the Rata-McHugh might be mine. Don Juan in hell. It's a thing nobody talks about, or at least not many do. He wants and she will, but he can't. And oh God, all the trying and faking to hide that it's trying. He can't forget it. And she wishes he'd fix it himself, or leave off in shame, or learn to talk dirty, or credit her kindness to him. But he just has directions to give and is no longer the man she agreed to. Then he says it's not her, and he'll need some weeks to relax. And it's always like this with a new one. But meanwhile, if only she didn't take such pleasure in the small things at a time like this. Nobody says, except for him who never has nothing to say. She mustn't let on, though it's time after time. The one thing they do well together is ride in his car. It's leather inside with a champagne's kick, and she's learned to hold it and scold it on those small time roads he thinks make him a man of the people. While he snoozes, his yakking switched now into blustering snorts, and his hand on hers on the stick, a weakling's, and no great shakes to her or the gearbox. She can make the thing walk, trot, and tit up, then rear up and charge, and she whinnies full throttle as the car hugs the roads. Not the world, but some part of it. When I scoured for love, some part of the world for arms to launch myself into, I kept my raid to myself or blabbed without cease. Mongrel me, who could feel here is one whom after I'll run, and never did know which me might be me the next moment. You, love of my life, have we met? And where and when? Was that you with the blue eyes and blonde who'd left women aside? Or you who, fat old baldy, still cried after a talk with a mother still cruel, then turned your venom on me? You with whom I tended the mad? Or you, more orphan, more surely yourself than me? I never have soured on love, the new lost grown out of. There is world yet and time yet enough. What is left? We think it is new. We are so afraid. We think there has never been, ever been a thing like our thing, so we are so afraid. Just think, a village rapes a girl, a village burns a man. Here is the maelstrom, here is the horror. People we like are like people we don't. It is our turn to live it and not know what hit us. It is our turn for mayhem that droppeth as rain. It is our turn to cry we are virtue's last bastion, while mayhem and help us turn us into them. She is 12 and they rape that girl over and over. That collar of tire, which then becomes fire, is fitted by many hands to one neck. Nobody taught us. We know how to do it. We shout and we leap for our lives to some standing. It is you. No, not I. Yes, and no, help us. We say that that thing is loosed from another town over. Oh, tut, tut, just think. It is ours and is us. What is left for our thing when havoc's in swing? All against all, first among none. The good man. It must have happened, Yorgas, to you. You found yourself downstairs one day in a child's game. Your playmates were strangers to you, and you just realized, and then realized more, you weren't that to them. That had to have happened, but that's not my point, which is this. You must have had sometime during your games or on the way up the staircase, a feeling to answer the one you'd first felt while you played. The first was a strangeness that you were known to these boys. The answering feeling hinted you'd already met them, hinted you'd been before now alive, but you didn't know for sure or when. That must have happened. Didn't it ever, Yorgos, to you? A tile from the vault of your infant's long lost came loose and left you somehow with words to suspect that today wasn't the first day you'd been in the world. And these boys, your mother had called them cousins, boys not yourself, had seen parts of you you'd never know. Our friendship has grown up too. When we first met, we were, of course, strangers, and you were vague to me time after time. So by the time we were friends, we each, am I wrong, had to wake to the other, as if meeting just then, not as strangers. Through a clearing the size of an unmoored tile, I'd glimpsed you but darkly, and had but a hint that my wide experience would be your never failing kindness and reserve that no one could miss, not even, I wish it were so, you, Yorgos, always yourself. Evening dance class. You forget you have told me this 3 weeks running, and I can see you slower than the others, afraid of putting the wrong foot forward and back to the side, tap the toe twice, then the heel. I see you stretching too long to the left, palms down when they should be up, the line of the newly enrolled moving here, and you still there. I see the swell of your ankle and tears, and you counting and keeping together with the intruders as best you can. Ignored now, neither stopping nor dancing. I can even see you writing your letter, telling your teacher how hurt you are to be now left behind. But I can't because you close the door and play the music for yourself alone. See you just later in spin, in time, alone, in tune, held up light and live by your wrists in graceful sweep, afraid in your dance of no one and nothing. What better than words put in the ear at close range? You said, close friends who for some time were cold while we hugged. I remember when the trees were dead and this was just a dream. You said you'd begun to remember enough of me to miss me, a close friend once, now in the cold. Bring me in out of, I know I meant to say. Then I awoke and found it has stayed with me. You saying those words I put in your mouth and that hug of conspiracy I made up for us. All week, those who want to and can have brought to this winter-wrapped road men and machines bringing bared trees to ground and grinding the hidden green pulse to dust. I'd be your friend again in a minute if you would remember and miss me and tell me you do. Catastrophe. Here I have been out Peneloping Penelope, though not a husband, yet a brother, and I've 35 years to her 20, no suitors, and about my life the loosed ends fray. On the weekend, the last of us, me, was reading in the sunshine from his schoolboy copy as Odysseus makes himself known bit by bit. From the right, not an eagle from Zeus, but a ladybug, traveling bug far from her home, rifles the pages ahead, flies from me, taking the shape of the wind. Penelope questions the stranger. He is tricked into the tail of the bedpost. She knows him, hurrah. And then grief, and I quote, Penelope speaks, think what difficulty the gods gave. They denied us life together in our prime and flowering years, kept us from crossing into age together. In his schoolboy pen, he'd marked just the 6th mark in the book, these lines. He'd bracketed the 4 together, as well as the inside 2, those twice. I had to turn my face from Ithaca and marvel at this, a sign, the first through all these years that he'd know of our cowls of sorrow, and knowing would not have bid us wear them. And so he is dead, dead decades ago, could not have let us suffer. Had the gods not been rinsed from our world long ago, it might have been Wayfinder Hermes and Ladybug sandals marking that passage while feast turned to massacre under my eyes. But the boy marked the passage, and he is dead now, I know. Son of once adamant mother, self-abjected father. They never bewailed at his bier, nor I. Or you, oh my brother, made hidden farewell on the margins of our fortune, content, your passage craftily marked, our lives clanging upon us. The next one I'm going to read will sound like it's the final one, but there'll be one more after that. Now I lay me over and over and over. Baby comes to take on the ogre. She tries the mountain that she dreamt when on rubber sheets she slept. Baby in her big girl bed held the dream as if it said, not fear of something being there, but fear of no one ever near, feared baby. Though not yet knowing life got lived, it was as if she dreamt a gift of future must. Poor baby, could she know how a thing not yet would go? It stayed as truth that dreamt of climb, and then she learnt that life was time, and tried to think she was not meant to be, nor was an isolate. Ogre, ogre, life's near over. If by song, words. I have no words I meant to have. And then she thinks, that's not just it, not the truth, not words I lack, not first the words. I have no thoughts, so do not need those words I thought I would. Once I thought great thoughts. I knew my dead, I knew my lost. Seemingly, I saw great sights. No one could see past me. An eye is not enough. An eye that keeps its pictures straight. An eye that names its colors. Upon the palette of my life lie puddled mirrors mirroring me. One color, me, mirroring me. Always me, the silenced lover, turning back to look too soon at me, the half-regained beloved. Me and me sitting in a tree, no birds to sing us tweet sweetly. Herself's bell jangled out one tune, unloved, love me alone. So she would not love the others, seeing only that her eye must then leave the face of her waters, and leaving, leave nothing. Without words, she would propagate muteness, her tongue a dull fish without spawn. Unmoved, her neck locked, looking into the watered eye, a blink, obliteration, looking, unmoved, her neck locked, looking into the watered eye, a blink, obliteration, a kiss, a drowning into self, but everything was. Where was truth? She'd been awash with love, held high above in daddy's arms, admired from below, apple of his eye, pink Pippin. Fall for me, he said, fall for me, the mother too. Her world had rippled with love. I'll catch you, you in my eye, love's old duet for three. Caught you, got you. Riven with love, she was so perfectly each of them. So as he was, so much was she as her, their little girl. She had an eye for everyone. She didn't know the others, though. They are themselves, she said. She said, completed, I am not. She said, completed, whole. She didn't see the others how, in mirrors, speaking each to each alone, they love. There she sat by the pool. Sitting by the pool, she watched her looking face, never spy what she sat and watched thereafter. Oh, mine eyes, you did lose sight of sights which pain not, please me. Tweedledum, kiss Tweedledum, tantalizing kiss and arid. If by song words return, the watch I keep, I'll keep now. But she could not say it. A bird, the wind, some tick-tock god touched the face of the water. She sang, they'd written on her tongue, interfered with its calving. What are you talking? What foolishness talking? Each neophyte phoneme, by a pout then a fuss, was repotted by daddy as a pathophone us, or a paleophoneme, save the girl graphed the stem, forget nodding the mother with a hothouse phoneme. And if this is so, my tongue so phonemed, it also is so that the ocean can't drown. But they, yes, but she, and then, and again. My tongue, it was flayed into floundering strips. It's mended. And yet, how little she knows. They wanted me dumb. No, they polished their pippin. Ah, a pink little piglet in constant snuff for the truffle of love. They made themselves mirrors. Their eyes were my pools. Daddy's smart cookie. And mother heard my words as chimes. Father Time sent Mother Tongue to fetch a pail of water. So she fetched the water's wet, the water's face, the deepy depth. So she fetched the water's voice in which they bathed their daughter. Ah, where's truth? Anchored at the mouth of the bay, the ship of truth keeps raising its hull. Yes, she says, I have words, but the mast dove returns to report a port famous for laughter and little of self. The anchor is weighed away, and then she sings, and then she sings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And can you, do you have a new book out you want to mention? Janet? I mean, Marcia?
I'm sorry?
You have a new book out that you
Yes, I do.
And
I
what
do.
is that?
It's right here. If by song.
Okay.
And you can, I'll put my email address in the chat. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, Janet Sylvester's our new reader right now, and she's the winner of the Pushcart Prize, a Penn Discovery Award, the Grolier Poetry Prize, among other honors, and her poems have appeared in many journals and anthologies, including the Best American Poetry, Georgia Review, Poetry Daily, Boulevard, etc. And she has a new book out, which I believe she'll be reading from. Thank you, Janet, for coming. Janet?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Thank you, Doug and Ellen and Kevin and Marcia. Wonderful poems. It's good to be here. Yeah, I do have a new book out. It's called And Not to Break. It won the Lauria Frasca Poetry Prize in 2019 and was published by Bordighera Press in New York in April 2020, which conceivably might be the worst publication date you could possibly hope for. So I'm grateful to have a chance to read here tonight and share some of the work with you. I'm going to read 4 or 5 poems. I'll see how this goes. I'm going to start with one. As a friend of mine once said, everybody should have a cat poem. And I didn't write this in response to that challenge. There is a cat in this poem, though, and like many of my poems, though, there's more than just a cat in it. Barometric. After the October sky's unbleached fabric color above the Federal Building, and God's snapshot of me and the bankruptcy lawyer shaking hands, after a poem full of flawed diamonds sold to a slick-haired salesman, certificates of deposit canceled, and debts discharged, there was still the cat, confined for the first time to the house, and he wanted out. Nose to the crack in the door out, still strong enough at 17 to tear the carpet from beneath the lintel out. Gothic, slowly break 10 fingers on a blackboard, meowing turned into a grating howl out. So we would go. Had I not let him stop to sniff the dead end of every branch beside the path that climbs around the knotted veins of the maples, the hill littered with plastic, amber glass, and a quick worm levering its length onto a leaf, he wouldn't, in increments of days, have led me to the meadow, a dead seminary's yard, overgrown, free, in lowering dark. I had the city, its panoramic scroll I didn't know I'd find, and the cat, jog-trotting as if the walk were something he had to do for urban me, close reading a tree's hollow and the blackberry cane's unaesthetic tangle he'd belly crawl beneath and turn around, composed, to look at me. I started to clean, picking up a can or two each day, something to do while businessmen advanced toward polished cars in guarded lots. Like commerce, I expanded, collecting oxidizing springs, socks, a tie in rain that needled dust to lace. We were nearly happy. The cat gnawing on grass that he might not throw up, the leaking braille of poison ivy blind in its advance across my arch. In bird song and its counterpoint, the hourly bus's diesel grind, the two of us were private, hermeneutes behind a broken building. Someone driving west into the Berkshires late those afternoons could never have seen or even dreamed us. On an orange leash, a woman deep in rubbishy thoughts walked by a gray tabby through wasteland the Mass Pike passes. How, as the rain came harder and she bent to lift him, the warm world twisted in her arms. The next poem that I will read is a little and pretty deadly form called a villanelle, 19-line form. If any of you have been to the barrier islands off Virginia and Maryland, there are wild horses there. And I used to go frequently at one period in my life, and I always felt somehow blessed by coming upon the horses. This poem is called Field Glasses. I was very stuck in writing it because it has to have repeating refrain lines. And I simply could not get one of the refrain lines. Nearly threw the thing away. And in my despair, I looked up the word refrain in the OED, and there was the line I needed, which is the original meaning of the word refrain, which comes from Provençal. The word is refragne, which means bird song. And I went, aha. So this poem is called Field Glasses. Though bird song shelters in the word refrain, that stallion, several mares, and pair of foals the water meadows utter, stand in rain, and noisy geese lift wings, black tipped to stain the sky above the reeds. The wind unrolls as their song shelters in the word refrain. I know that loss has nothing left to gain today from me. I'm made of parts and wholes, personified as standing water in the rain. And still, the afternoon's gray circle drains ditch water into oily flame. The cold's outside and in, despite the word refrain. 6 horses the ocean once contained, half drowned, half swam across the shoals, then jumped the meadows in the water, climbed the rain, to turn to me their dark regard. Darkly sane, a dream the world invents of time unfolds inside a water drop. The word refrains from Provençal, which spoke in birds and rain. This next question, I guess it is a question, but not really. This next poem was born from mayhem, to steal a word from Marcia. Thank you for that. This particular mayhem, there seems to be more and more of it, but this particular mayhem was the tsunami that struck the Thai coast at Banda Aceh a number of years ago now, and I happened to be house sitting for people, and began then to work on developing a real CNN addiction. This poem also somehow becomes about art. It's called Away from the Flock. As children tripped against the first hard surf at Banda Aceh in New Hampshire, on a lake where bluish ghost glow rose with snow, the wind twisted into funnels above water thickening under them, ice planes boomed, adjusting at their seams. Half a world away, a continental plate shifted into long waves the gray gauze of TV pixels would make look small, rolling across beach chairs into palm trees, little people clinging almost soundlessly to wrinkles in the muddy current. At the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, days later, an acrid burn gathering at the back of my throat. I sat before Damien Hirst's sheep, dead of natural causes. Afloat in a glass tank of formaldehyde, palely green, it balanced on hoof tips as dread does. Tendons exposed in the wool behind each foreleg, and in its dark face, eyes rolled upward under tissuey lids. Banda Aceh, at a window sheeted closed, beside a table in which a woman's back thinned to virtual object, above a pond white pines and light snow couldn't interrupt. A fox's reddish blur skittered, my moral twin, toward pleading water cold hadn't claimed. Moving men in Boston wrestled to uncrate the sinews of an art infarcted as a dying heart. Downstairs, the announcer's sentences, excited, lengthened exponentially on CNN, as if what's arrhythmic weren't life. I couldn't turn it off. Okay. 2 more poems. I recently, in May 2020, I seem to be specializing in pandemic activity, though not always the wisest. I moved from New Hampshire to Rockport, Massachusetts. And I'm very pleased about that, and about living near the sea, which I've always wanted to do in this way. This poem, the next poem I'm going to read, wasn't born of being in this place, but does have to do with a very strange and beautiful ocean occurrence that I assume everybody else knows about, but I never did. It's called sea smoke. And if you've ever seen sea smoke, you won't forget it. It occurs when it's extremely cold out and the sun hits ice on the ocean and the ice begins to fume and it rises up into strangely artistic looking columns. And I happened to see this one time and then thought, what in the heck was that? Unfortunately, was in my car, so couldn't stop. And I'm trying to find the page right now and cannot. Here we go. took so long to publish this book, I should have all the page numbers memorized too. Sea smoke. Frost on a window, indistinguishable from roses, knotted into a curtain, burning as blue dawn drains into it from the backyard apple, its parabola of ruddy spheres, what's left of summer. Across the fence, a red boat's dry docked, buttoned against snow that won't arrive until later. Warming your hands at a cup of coffee in the kitchen, you send your wish into the hemlocks and beyond them to the bridge that takes you away commuting days. You want to root here into the waters going and coming, to be home in this old place, long skirts hurried through to the small barn a Mexican restaurant worker rents now. Instead, you layer sweaters, walk out to scrape ice from the car, coughing like luck into drive. Past the square that plows have already heaped into drifts, you slide onto the bridge, and how can it be worded? The braiding tensions of the current, the light the world flows inside, have turned to precious metals. Every register of platinum and rose gold issues into the frigid channel, coaxed by sun into thermal plumes, bright steam cooling to droplets, bent by air into pyramids, dozens of them, seemingly still. You stop, idling for minutes to let the bridge raise, then drop. The day's first fruit, a form of fog exhaled by water, already gone, as the future accumulates in the rear view mirror. An apple tree, dirt brown, disappearing into the chapel of its vanished leaves. Okay, I will read one more poem for you, which is the last poem of the book, called Prologue. When the book was first published a year ago, it seemed that this poem sort of foretold the end of the pandemic. Of course, no such luck, as it were. But here is a poem called Prologue. Last night, we fell asleep before the end of the world. Another lengthy TV special, bursting gamma rays, rogue asteroids, supervolcanoes, latent nuclear fiascos. Awake until computer technologists created intelligences turned against us. We didn't wonder why. To be human is first to try to flee, but then to burn, drown, freeze, and gasp with surfeit and or lack. The 2 bouquets of dahlias, burnt orange and lavender tipped, shading to purple, that you brought back from the market and mixed, drank hard anyway, their stems thickly visible in a clear vase, their petals candle flame shaped, perking up. When we awakened, the end of weeks of drought and the 7th and final threat to existence coincided. The worst news wasn't hard to try to bear. A flooding fragrance, sweeter than the dahlias, streamed through the open windows. Dirt, cream, parsley, burnt sugar. We opened the door to the porch that hot ghost had pressed against for so long. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Another fine reading for the Free Library Poetry Series. I think we're going to join us in November again for our next reading. And right now, I think Ellen is going to introduce the people for the open mic segment of our show.
Thank you so much, Doug. And I'd like to call Karen Klein up to the microphone. Karen, you need to take your, turn your,
Yeah, thank you, Ellen. Okay. I didn't, a lovely reading. Thank you to all the readers so much. I hope I'm unmuted now. I didn't know what anybody was going to read, and so it is pure coincidence that the poem I'm going to read also includes part of a child's prayer that Marcia referenced in one of her poems. My poem is a true memory, and it's called Covers. Sitting on the covers next to me, hands folded in prayer, as she taught me, together we recited, "Now I lay me down to sleep." Not knowing what my 4-year-old mind understood, what die before I wake meant, or what my soul was that the Lord would keep, knowing whoever the Lord was, that my mother would keep my body tucked in securely, so I would not fall out, but fall asleep. Coming next to say goodnight, Daddy, completely clothed, shirt, trousers, but stocking feet, would loosen the covers to come under. Turning left together, he would place his right arm gently over my right shoulder. This wordless gesture, our communication, cradled, I fell asleep. One bedtime, the tone of his voice stern. Your mother said, I cannot go under the covers. Staring at one another in silence, my puzzled awareness of wrong, our mutual but differently known innocence, her unspoken accusation shamed us both, remaining forever outside the covers.
Karen, I want to, I know you have a poetry and dance program coming up on this Sunday. Maybe you can briefly say something about
Oh,
that.
yes, please, everybody, at Starlight Square in Central Square in Cambridge. Text Moves, which is a collaborative of poets, dancers, and now some musicians, is having a wonderful program at 4 p.m. Sunday afternoon. Starlight Square is an open air outdoor theater, so very safe to be there. And several poets that you may know their work will have their poems choreographed and danced. Among them, Doug Holder, Elizabeth McKim, Marlena Mirren, Lo Galuccio, Judson Evans, Nina Alonso, and yours truly. So I invite everybody to come. The concert is free. You just need to go to Eventbrite to Text Moves because Starlight wants people to register so they know how many people will be there so they have enough seats for everybody. Thank you, Doug, for mentioning.
You're welcome. Yeah. Okay, the next in our open mic.
and now Sergio, it is your turn to read.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening to everyone. Please excuse my English. My English is still very broken. Probably better to read in Espanol, but anyway, I will do my best. And good evening to Doug also. This poem is, the title of this poem is Christ Migrant. It's related to the border. I'm from Mexico, so it's natural that I write about migration many times. So here we go. Christ arrives at the border. It comes from everywhere, and it has taken the form of a child, of a woman, of an old man, of a young woman expecting a child, of the man who flees from violence. The Christ, like all the others before him, seeks to achieve his dream. Christ is going to cross the border. He will climb the wall. There is no other way, he sings. And he says it out loud for all to hear. Some will follow his example. Others will continue waiting for a miracle. There is no turning back, he tells them. If you have already come so close to caress the desires of your heart, follow the path, and your own dream will come true. Later, it will be seen, he warns them, what is that dream made of? Thank you so much. Buenas noches.
Thank you so much, Sergio. And Keith, you are up next.
Thank you. So this is another children's story in a way. Last week was Rosh Hashanah, and on the second day of Rosh Hashanah, the Torah reading is the sacrifice of Isaac. And I read this poem, which was published last year in Doug Holder's Ibbotson Street. Hands. I walked up the mountain with my Abba, my father. Hand in hand we walked. I carried the wood for the sacrificial fire on my back and held his left hand. And in his right hand, he held the fire pot to start it. Around his waist was a rope with a knife. As we walked, something puzzled me. Abba, I asked, here is the wood and the fire, but where is the animal for our sacrifice? God will provide, my son, he replied. I fell silent and we walked on in quiet. But soon I spotted a wild deer off to the side of the path. Abba, is that the animal for our sacrifice? No, but God will provide, my son. I fell silent and we walked on in quiet. Sometime later, I saw a goat that had strayed up the mountain. Abba, is that the animal for our sacrifice? No, but God will provide, my son. Again, I fell silent and we walked on in quiet. When we reached the top, I remained silent as I watched my father gather stones and build an altar with them and lay the wood upon it. I even remained silent and did not cry out when he bound me with the rope and laid me on the wood atop the altar, even when he took up the knife and placed it at my throat. I must have fainted then, for the next thing I knew, I was lying on the grass, unbound, amid the smoking smell from the wild ram burning upon the altar. Afterward, we walked back down the mountain, but I did not hold my father's hand. Thank you.
Heidi, you're up next. Is Heidi Selick here?
Yep.
Oh,
Can you-
hi, Heidi.
Hi. I can't see you, but I think you can see me. What if Jesus was a dog, not a black man or a white man? What if he waited by the door, hoping this time we'd walk with him, follow in his footsteps? This time we'd figured out the right thing, the painful, problematic possibility of love folded tight as a fist, hiding silent somewhere in us, twisted in the dark cave of our chest, someplace we want to call the heart, not knowing how such tragic magic derives, whether within us for some better place? Would he hope for more besides here and now? Unlike the other Jesuses pinioned by history, oblivious to resurrection, the baffling, ridiculous notion of being prayed to, I think he would lie down in the softest places, paw us to sit by him, our humblest teacher, raise his head to the blue crucible of sky, eyes soft with wonder, look up to what we call heaven, a color he can neither name nor see, cloud dazzled, and sniff the air. His somber eyes, tongue red as sacramental wine, pant a mute prayer and treat us, poor naked sisters and brothers. Remember, I love you, even when you're angry, weak, weary, too busy, and forget I'm here. I forgive you. No sermons or homilies, just his soft fur shimmering in the extravagant sun, eyes soulful, as if he's murmuring straight into a place we keep trying to name, though our words make no sense. Remember how it feels to be loved like that, without wine or wafers, and heartbreakingly no rebirth. Only his soft body, tipsy with joy in your intoxicating love for him. He asks nothing but that you look at him, recognize the good in each other, love one another like him. In your lonely nakedness, your vulnerable skin, he knows sometimes that's hard for you. Yet imagine Christ is a dog and you are lucky enough to recognize him or her, grasping your paw, furry body quivering with love for you and this earthly realm. Look up, doves, pigeons, ravens wheel airborne, daily unheralded miracles fly in the bright azure container of the sky. Consider the sparrows. Offer yourself up like Francis mendicant, roll in the dirt with him or her, bow down on your hands and knees, kiss the earth. Beg for what the world seldom gives the lost, wandering, lonely, the meager bone in the hollow bowl for the brief time we are here. Imagine all the dogs running in the streets, crashing into the world unwanted, too young to know any better. Cars and cruelty speed forward to meet them, crucify them, and we ask them to bear the unbearable in metal cages, hunched by greed of those who believe in dominion over the animals. Words construed from a Bible they claim as law. Yet here they come, the dogs, tumbling into us, hurtling their soft bodies toward what will only obliterate them, insensible of death, always kneeling on life, minute to minute, the terrible certainty of this, the stunning weight of their innocence. Yet tails wagging, rapture of joy and delight, they greet us as if they know kindness exists, as if they believe we sinners are their gods, as if they imagine us as Jesus too.
Thank you so much, Heidi. And our last reader for this evening is Alan Ball, I think is Alan's last name.
Hello. Hi. I hope you can hear me.
We can hear you, Alan.
Thanks. And I thank you for the opportunity to read a poem. I'm a little rusty. It's been a long time. And my just for the record, my complete name now is Alan Ball Blydenberg. I've added another part of a last name because there are too many Alan Balls, and I was getting confused with everybody in town. This is entitled A Diaphanous Moon. I am experiencing homelessness. When I look into the early sign of dusk that seems to think with a collective mind and eyes that discern the jobless and employed, With the view, I am coming home from work again. I believe in the after school, gray with something I later discover, like the passing of a mother or the heartbreak of a fail. I believe in all who breathe the world in a way I cannot, on days that gray with the passing of noon. I work on the immobile car and pray until I give up, until I break through, longing windows start to glow. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Alan. And I want
Welcome.
to thank everyone for coming this evening. Again, my name is Ellen Myers. I'm the Programs and Communications Director for the Newton Free Library. I welcome you to visit our website at newtonfreelibrary.net or come down and see us in person in the library. Doug, is there any closing words you'd like to make?
Just that thanks for everyone who has come tonight, and we hope to see you again in November. And we'll send out notices in regard to that where you can register.
Sounds great. Thanks so much for all you do for the series, Doug.
Thank you, Doug.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Doug.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.